Well, seeing the news about the US President Donald Trump and, well, his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, who are likely to meet in Paris next month, their first encounter since the summit in Helsinki. The possibility of a meeting on November 11th came after a meeting between the US National Security Advisor John Bolton and the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow this week. The Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty will possibly be the focus of the talks between the two leaders. On Sunday, the US president's stunning announcement about withdrawing from the treaty had caused widespread global concern. Trump's announcement to withdraw from the nuclear weapons treaty came after he accused Russia of violating the treaty.
We may, it's being discussed right now, Mike Bolton, as you know, is in Russia, talking about various things, including the whole nuclear situation. Where we were not treated well for many years. This should have been done a long time ago. And I think something good could come out of that. And I very well meet with, I think we probably will. It hasn't been set up yet, but it probably will be.
Meanwhile, China has called on the relevant parties to properly address the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty dispute. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said it completely is wrong to link the US withdrawal from the treaty to China.
The Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty is a treaty signed by the US and the former Soviet Union. It's a bilateral treaty. It's totally unreasonable to make an issue out of China on withdrawing from the treaty. China always upholds a national defense policy that's defensive in nature and firmly safeguards its legitimate security interest. We will by no means accept any kind of blackmail. We would like to urge the US not to move against the trend and think twice before taking any action.
And while Julia Chapman is joining us from Moscow for the very latest on this. And Julia, thanks for joining us this evening. Now, Paris seems to be a neutral venue, but no guarantees here that President Trump will adhere to any international laws or treaties. What does Moscow hope to achieve from this, this supposed meeting that's going to take place?
Yes, I think after John Bolton's two-day visit to Moscow over the last couple of days, the Russians have no illusions about trying to convince the Americans to stay in the treaty. John Bolton yesterday at his press conference that I attended was very clear that the US would be withdrawing and that a formal notification of withdrawal would be happening in the next couple of months, possibly as early as December. There's a 6-month withdrawal process from the INF treaty, which means that it could stop coming into effect in the summer next year. So that will definitely be on the agenda if this meeting in Paris does go ahead. It is, in fact, as you said, a neutral setting. John Bolton was talking about it yesterday. It does seem like this meeting will be going ahead on the sidelines of the memorial centenary event of the World War I that has came to an end 100 years ago.
Right. And Julia, you know, when you talk about the relationship between the US and Russia, it hasn't seen this kind of an escalation, many would believe, since the Cold War. And withdrawing from this treaty would just worsen the situation pretty much.
That's certainly the perspective from the Russian side. Russian officials and experts here have been unilaterally condemning this move. They say that the INF treaty is integral to worldwide stability and that the withdrawal from it will lead to a new arms race. That's certainly the view of some people here in Moscow. So there are some concerns that it does make the world a more dangerous place, but the Americans seem convinced that that's not the case. And of course, as you alluded to earlier, there are concerns on the American side that, of course, this treaty only applied to the US and Russia. John Bolton was certainly speaking about that yesterday. He said in the end, of course, the Americans accused the Russians of having violated this treaty over the last 6 years. So he said, given that other nuclear powers around the world, namely China as well as Iran, North Korea, were among his concerns, and the fact that they accused the Russians of violating it, he said the US is the only country being bound by this agreement, so why should the US be held to it any longer? There was some scope for possible renegotiation. There was some hope that that might have taken place or might be still on the table, but I think after John Bolton's visit over the last 2 days, we've seen that that's very unlikely to happen.